Let's take a look at a handful of the problems from the algebra final, and we'll start with question number 1. It says, true or false, linear systems can have two solutions. This, of course, is going to be false. Why is it false? Well, if we're talking about linear systems, we know that that looks like two straight lines, and one option might be if they intersect a single time. Well, that's just one solution. If they never intersect, if they're parallel, then that's going to be no solutions. And if they actually overlap, if they've got the same slope, then what that means is we're going to have infinite solutions. So no, it's false is the correct response for question A1. We got A2 apparently. Vertical lines have zero slope. That of course is going to be false. Same thing with B. It says -2, 1 is not on the line. Correct. That's also going to be false because the way it's reflected is +2, -1. We'll talk more about that in class. C, it says true or false, -3 is a horizontal line. That's going to be true. Why is that true? Well, if we have, for example, we got the coordinate plane and we count up 3 spots, 1, 2, 3, we know that y is a horizontal line all the way across, because anywhere we are on this line is going to be a number, 3, right? So here, for example, we have 2, 3. Here we have 5, 3, -3, 3. So y equals 3 is in fact a horizontal line. And let's take a look at D row real quick. It says, what kind of sequence is this? Arithmetic, geometric, or neither. And let's analyze it. How are we going from 1 to 4? Well, we're either multiplying by 4 or we're adding 3, right? How do we get from 4 to 9? We're adding 5. How do we get from 9 to 16? We add 7. How do we get from 16 to 25? We add 9. So this is not going up by a common difference or a common ratio. So this is going to be neither. Neither. Tremendous. Let's take a look at number 2. It says find the equation of a line given in a graph. So that's the subject, and it wants us to know what is the equation of the line shown. So we're looking at this blue line, and if we're going to be using y equals mx plus b format, that template right there, we know that it's going to be y equals x something b, right? Either plus or minus b. And when we take a look at it, we know that the y-intercept is right here, and that's a -4. So we know that it's going to be x minus 4. Tremendous. But what about the slope? So we've got the y-intercept, we've got the b. What about the slope? I can see that we're counting up 1, 2, 3, and then over 1. 1, 2, 3 over 1. The rise over the run, right? And so it's going to be 1, 2, 3 over 1. So the slope, of course, is 3 or 3 over 1. And this is the equation. Beautiful. You write that, you get full credit. Let's take a look at finding the average rate of change. We want the average rate of change. We've talked about that a little bit. And we want to know the position and time of a car is mapped in this chart below. Find the average rate of the vehicle. So what do we know? We know that time is always x, right? And we know that position is always y. And what we're going to be looking at is the beginning, or the initial, and the end, or the final. And we can write that like 190 minus 10 over 6 minus 1. And so this formula, like y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, is going to give us what? It's going to give us 180 over 6 minus 1. 6 minus 1, of course, is 5. And when you pop that in your handy-dandy calculator, you're going to get 36, or 36 is this meters per second. Is that an option? Sure is. Option number D. Let's take a look at question number 5. It says, finding intercepts of a line. Find the y-intercept of 3x minus 2y equals -30. Find the y-intercept. And let's pause real quick. So we know that if we've got this coordinate plane, right? And we need to find the y-intercept. Where specifically does it cut across this axis right here? Well, what is the value of x on the y-axis? The value of x anywhere along here is going to be 0. The value of y anywhere along the x-axis, which is, let's label that real quick. The value of y anywhere along the x-axis is also going to be 0. Does that make sense? So what do we know? We need to find the y-intercept. Well, a second ago we said that the value of x anywhere along the y-intercept is going to be 0. Anywhere along here. Alright, so if the value of x is 0 and we've got to find the y-intercept, what we're going to do is we're going to write that like 3 open parentheses minus 2y equals negative 30. Alright, and because 0 is whatever the value is along the y-intercept, we can pop 0 in for x. Beautiful. And so 0 times 3 is 0, of course, and then we're just left with negative 2y equals negative 30. Let's divide both sides by negative 2 because we know that we need to isolate the variable. And then what is 30? Negative 30 divided by 2, that's going to give us positive 15. All right, so y is 15. So what is the y-intercept going to look like? It's going to look like 0, comma 15. Is that an option for A? Nope, not for B either. What about for C? So for C, I see it's 15, comma 0, but we know that the y has got to be 0. So the option, of course, is D. Let's take a quick look at question number 6, where we're going to be analyzing and applying understanding of point-slope form. It says, write the equation of a line in point-slope form. All right, if the line passes through negative 1, comma 4 and 6, comma negative 1. Well, I see here a few examples of point-slope form, right? So here's the y value, here's the x value, and here's the slope. The first thing that we're going to need to do is figure out what the slope is. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know this formula, you must know it for the final. So we know that formula for slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And if you don't know, well, now you know. Alright, so we know that formula. Now what we're going to do is we're going to label this. Ladies and gentlemen, always, always, always label this. It's easy to make mistakes. Even I make mistakes sometimes. And we're going to label this like x1, y1, x2, y2. Tremendous. And now let's pop that in. Let's figure out what the slope is. Actually, why not do it right here? So the slope is going to look like what? It's going to look like negative 1 minus 4. Alright, and then we're looking at x2 minus x1. It's going to be 6 minus negative 1. And so negative 1 minus 4 is going to give us negative 5 over what? 6 minus negative 1, which is actually going to give us positive 7. Alright, so this is our slope. Ladies and gentlemen, negative 5 over 7, and let's see which options have negative 5 over 7. Well, not this one sure doesn't. I see it's negative 7 over 5, so it can't be that. Negative 7 over 5 can't be this one right there. Oh, but it looks like it's either this or this. So now what we need to do is take another step. And we need to figure out, alright, and actually this is, I erased it, but it's negative 1 comma 4. And we've got 6 comma negative 1. Alright, which of these two coordinates is relevant in this point slope form? It's going to be the first one, right? So we're not looking at 6 comma negative 1. And I know that very simply, and I'll elaborate on this in class, that we're going to basically flip the sign. So I can see that this is y minus 4, and here we've got a positive 4. So we're going to flip the sign because that's one way of looking at it. And because we know, actually I'll scribble this down right now. Point slope form is y minus y1 equals m open parentheses x minus x1. Alright. And so we know that for a positive 4 to be included in point slope form, it's going to be reflected like y minus 4. And likewise for the x value, so this is x plus 1. If we were to plug negative 1 in here, x minus x1, the negative is going to become a positive. If that's a little bit confusing, we'll certainly talk about it in class. And so the answer is definitely option A. Let's take a look at question number 7. It says, writing equation of a line in the slope-intercept form. Alright, so we need to write the equation of a line that passes through the 2 points in slope-intercept form, and here are the 2 points. And so what I'm going to do right off the bat is find M. or the slope. And once we do that, we can figure out what the y-intercept is, or b. So let's do that together. We know that the formula for slope is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Tremendous. And if I had a little bit more space, I would label it. You guys are going to label it when you take this quiz, or the test rather, and so let's pump that right on in. So I know that's going to be 6 minus 2, and then it's going to be 4 minus negative 2. And so that's going to give us 4 over 6, and we can simplify that to 2 over 3. So 2/3 is our slope. And let's see which options we've got. We've got a few different ones, and I can see that A, for example, has a slope of 2/3, as does B. C, D, and E do not. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cross them out, because I know that those aren't even options. A little bit of process of elimination. So now what we got to do is we got to figure out which is the relevant slope-intercept form based on the y-intercept, and I can see that this is positive 10/3 and this is negative 10/3. So clearly the intercept is going to be 10 over 3. We got to figure out if it's positive or negative. How do we do that? Well, that's a great question. We're going to be using slope-intercept form, which we know is y equals mx plus b. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pop in the slope, which is 2 over 3. And instead of y and x, we're going to change it to one of the coordinates that were listed right here. So we could have done negative 2 and 2, or we could do 4 and 6. I'm going to pick 4 and 6. So 4, of course, is x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the x to 4. And then y, of course, is going to be 6. Beautiful. All right, so we're going to isolate for b to figure out what the slope is. 4 times 2 is 8. Divided by 3 is what? 8/3. And you know what we'll do that right now just in case that's a little bit confusing. 4 times 2 is 8 over 3 times 1. So that's going to give us 6 equals 8/3 plus b. So now what we need to do is we need to figure out how do we isolate for b. Well, here we have this is a positive 8/3, so we're going to subtract 8/3. Okay, and if we subtract it from one side, we get to subtract it from the other. And when we do that, you could actually do this on your calculator, so it's a little bit easy. But we know that if we're subtracting 6 minus 8/3, that's the same thing as 6 over 1 minus 8/3. And for us to subtract 8/3 from 6, the denominators have got to be the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply both sides by what? So that the denominators are both 3. We're going to multiply both by 3. 3 times 6 is going to give us 18, and so this is what this is going to look like. 3 times 6 is 18, so I'm going to write 18 over 3 times 1 is 3. 18 over 3 minus 8 over 3 is what? Well, 18 minus 8 is going to give us positive 10. The denominator doesn't change, so it's positive 10 over 3. So what does that mean? This means that when we subtract 8/3 from 6, or 18 over 3, we're going to get 10/3. B equals 10/3. B equals 10/3. So the answer to question number 7 is A. Y equals 2/3 x plus 10/3. Let's take a look at question number 8. It says a baseball manager bought 4 gloves and 9 balls for $76.50. On another day, she bought 3 gloves and 12 balls at the same price and paid $81. How much did she pay for each glove and each ball? Alright, so we're going to need our handy dandy calculator for this, and I see there's some rates, and I know that 4 gloves, and we're going to let G equal gloves. So I'm going to write 4 gloves plus 9 balls equal $76.50. And again, we don't know how much each ball is or each glove is. We're going to determine that. That's our objective. What else do we know? We know that 3 gloves, and we're going to let, again, G equal gloves, plus 12 balls, we'll let 12 equal B equals how much? 81 bucks. All right, so we're going to use the elimination method. Why not? To figure out how much. Let's do this. How much she paid for each glove and each ball. And what we're going to do is we're going to bracket each of these equations with parentheses. And what are we going to multiply into it? Well, we know that we need the sign to be the opposite, but the coefficient to be the same. And ladies and gentlemen, I think the easiest thing would be to get rid of the g's. So to do that, what we're going to do is multiply -3 on the top and +4 on the bottom. And what is that going to look like? Well, I know that -3 times 4 is going to give us -12g minus 27b equals, and let's figure this out. 3 times 7650. All right, and where is it going to be? -229.5. And again, of course, we're distributing, right? We're multiplying this into each of these three terms. Likewise, we've got to distribute 4 into 3g, and that's going to give us positive 12g. 4 times 12 is what? 48. Of course, 48b. I knew that, I just didn't want to give you the wrong answer. Then 4 times 81 is what? 324. Beautiful. All right, and now I can see that 12g minus 12g cancels out. Does that make sense? So we've eliminated the g's. Now we're about to isolate for the b's. What is 48 minus 27? It's going to give us 21. 21b equals, what's 324 minus 229.5? You guys, you should be doing this at home along with me. Pause at any given point if you're a little bit confused or you want to do it on your own. And I know that it's 94.5. 94.5 divided by 21 because we're isolating for B. And that's going to give us $4.50. Each ball is going to be $4.50. All right, we're not done. How much then is each glove? Well, if each ball is $4.50, and we've got this equation, we've got to plug it into either the top or the bottom. Well, why not plug it into the bottom? It doesn't matter. You can do both simply to check. And so what I'm going to do is 3g plus 12 open parentheses equals 81. And now, instead of b, I'm going to plug in 4.5. What is 12 times 4.5? It's 54. Beautiful. And then if we subtract that from both sides, so it's going to be 81 minus 54. It's going to give us 27. All right, so we've got 3g equals 27. We got to isolate for g. We know that we need to divide both sides by 3. So g, each glove is worth how much? $9. $9. 9 smackaroos. Tremendous. Alright guys, let's take a look at question number 9. Again, we're on version number 1. This is a linear system word problem. Sabrina owns a factory that makes fancy hats. The cost of rent each month is $6,000. The cost of raw materials for each hat is $250, and she can sell each hat for $20. How many hats must Sabrina sell to make a profit of $6,000? So we need to figure out the equation for cost, the equation for revenue, and distinguish that from profit. So let's talk about that right now. So what is the cost? We know that the cost is the money required to sort of like start and operate a business. And in this case, cost is what? So the cost of raw materials for each hat is $250. All right, so if we let each hat be, what variable could we use? We could use H. I'll just use X. So let's say each hat is X. She spends $250 per hat. So she's going to pay $5 to make 2 hats. She's going to spend $10 to make 4 hats. So that's part of the cost. What else? What other cost is there? There is the cost of rent right here, right? So it's $6,000. So here we've got, this is the rate. This is the starting cost, kind of like the slope in the y-intercept, if we were graphing this. But what else do we know? It says she can sell each hat for 20 bucks. That's a nice little markup right there. And so revenue, okay, revenue is like the money that we collect, right? And that's going to be $20 per hat, or simply 20x. Does that make sense? So for example, well, before we get any more complicated, let's identify what the equation is for profit. So what is profit? Profit equals the revenue minus the cost, right? So if you're opening up a lemonade stand and you're spending 10 bucks on sugar and lemons and marketing, you're going to want to make at least 10 bucks, because if you only sell $9 worth of lemonade, you're not making a profit. You need to make minimally more than the amount that you put into the business. So how do we figure out what this looks like? Revenue minus cost. That's going to be, the revenue of course is 20x minus, and what is the cost? The cost is 2.5 per hat plus the $6,000, right? Does that make sense? Plus $6,000. But critically, we must put this in parentheses, all right, because we don't want to sort of get revenue and cost confused. So now we need to distribute. It says we've got this little negative here, and we can put a -1, and we're going to distribute the -1 into the 2.5x and then into the 6,000 to determine what the profit equation is. So that's going to look like 20x. What's -1 times 2.5x? It's going to be -2.5x minus 6,000. What is 20x minus 2.5x? That, of course, is going to be positive 17x minus 6,000. So what is this right here? This is the equation for profit. All right. Let's go back to this word problem. What is it asking us? It's saying, how many hats must Sabrina sell to make a profit of $6,000? To make a profit of $6,000. Well, I know that this is the formula for profit, and we know that this is x represents the number of hats. We need to isolate for x. Oh, okay. All right, let's do it. And so we're looking for profit of $6,000. That's all of the money that she's made after all of those costs. So I'm going to rewrite this like this. Okay. Amazing. And I know that we need to, as always, isolate for x. To do that, we got to get rid of this -6,000. So we're going to add 6,000. All right, so if we add 6,000 to one side, we got to do it to the other. And now all of a sudden, we've got 12,000 equals 17.5x. To isolate for x, we've got to divide both sides by, oops, not x, but by 17.5. Okay, let's do that in a calculator. I can't divide 12,000 by 17.5, so let's bust out our handy dandy calculator. 12,000 divided by 17.5 gives us 685.714 equals x. So how many, this is kind of ugly right there. All right, so she needs to sell 685.7 hats to turn a profit. Now we can't have 0.7th a hat, right? We can't have a fraction of a hat. So what we're going to do is we're going to say minimally Sabrina's got to sell 686 hats to turn a profit of $6,000. Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, I already created and sent you video tutorials on questions number 10, 11, 12, 13. This is on sequences with recursive and arithmetic on the explicit equation, along with translating. We've got all these marbles. So you guys want to reference that video tutorial if you have any questions. I'm going to do a few more questions from version number 2. Let's jump right on in. Let's take a look at question number 2 from version 2. It says find the equation of a line. It says what is the equation of the line shown? So we're looking at the blue line, and we're going to be using the slope-intercept form, which we know is y equals mx plus b. And so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to find the y-intercept, the b. Where does it cut across the y-axis? About right there. And that looks like a positive 5. Alright, so b is 5. We know the x is standard, right? But what is the m? What is the slope? I can see that if it's starting right here, it's going down 1, 2, 3, and then over 1. 1, 2, 3 over 1. So if the rise is going down, that's going to be negative. So it's going to be negative 3 or negative 3 over 1. Both work, and that is the answer. What about question number 3? Here we got average rate of change. We know that we've got the position and the time, and just like in the earlier one, what we need to do is subtract 10 from 140. So that's going to look like 140 minus 10 over what? So we've got the position, the final position subtracted by the initial. Likewise, we've got to subtract the final time from the initial time. And that's going to give us what? So 140 divided by 10, 140 minus 10 is going to be 130. 6 minus 1 is 5. 130 divided by 5 is what? 26. So the answer is going to be 26 meters per second. Option B. Let's jump ahead to question number 9, but before we do, I need to say that on this particular problem, the linear system word problem, question number 8, I've already made video tutorials detailing every step to solving this problem, so you're going to want to reference that if you're feeling a little bit confused. But let's start with linear system word problems, and I can see that this is Sabrina again. She's got this factory, and it says that the cost of rent is $4,000. The cost of raw materials for each hat, it looks like, is $250. Alright, so what we need to do, let's zoom out just to make sure. Okay, beautiful. So the cost is what? So each hat costs her $250 to make. Alright, and let's let X represent hats. Plus $4,000. Alright, that's the cost of rent. That's not changing. Like for each month, it's $4,000. We need to figure out how many hats does Sabrina have to sell to make a profit of $4,000 if she's selling his hats for 20 bucks a piece. So the revenue, the money that she's collecting, is $20 per hat, or 20x. So if she sells 5 hats, she's making $100. And what about profit? Profit is revenue minus cost. So in this case, it's going to be 20x minus 2.5x plus 4,000. And ladies and gentlemen, we never want to forget to put that in parentheses. And we know that when we simplify this a little bit further, we distribute the negative 1 into it. It now looks like the profit equation now looks like 20x minus 2.5x minus 4,000. And 20x minus 2.5x is going to give us 17.5x minus 4,000. That is the profit. That's the profit equation. Does that make sense? Is it clear how we got there? If not, let's chat about it in class or ask a buddy. All right. So the question is, again, how many hats does she have to sell to make $4,000? So what we're going to do is we're going to replace profit with $4,000. So when $4,000 is the is the amount of profit, we know that we can make that equal to 17.5x minus 4,000. And now we need to simply solve for x. Let's subtract 4,000 from both sides. And when we do that, we're going to have 8,000 equals 17.5x. So now what we're going to have to do is divide both sides by 17.5 to figure out how many hats she needs to sell. And 457. Great. So Sabrina's got to sell 400. X equals 457 point like 142, whatever. So for her to make a profit, she's got to sell 458 hats. Beautiful. And once she sells that, she'll have $4,000 in profit. Nice.